Hello, everyone. It's your good buddy Amigo Aaron here, along with everyone's favorite pal, the Boat. How's it going, Boat?
Hey man, I heard you had a pod jam.
That's what I heard too, Boat. It's Amigo Aaron's Podjam 2024. This is our commemorative show to talk about the Podjam and discuss the various participants and ultimately announce the winner of the 2024 Podjam. Boat, I gotta ask you. Uh, when I called you up and mentioned to you that it'd be fun if a bunch of people made new podcasts because I was bored on my drive, what was it that spurred you on to literally just do the whole thing?
Well, that wasn't how it happened at all. What
Oh, that's
happened
not
was
how you remember it?
you posted on your Discord channel. Wouldn't it be awesome if we had a pod jam? Because you were talking about some other kind of game jam or whatever. But this
Right.
all came from your channel on the Discord, which I read with fervor every day.
I could have sworn
Okay.
I called you on the road, but that may be hither or thither. But for whatever reason, the genesis, the seed of the pod jam was the fact that I ran out of podcasts to
Right.
listen to because I drive a lot. Many prisons I go to, both police
This
stations.
the reason why this was able to come to fruition was because in order for me to execute something I want to do, I have to be able to see the end goal, okay? And so there's a lot of times people come to me with ideas and I flat out say there's no way in heck I'll ever do that ever. But with the pod jam, I knew it was possible. And the reason why I knew it was possible was because we've been immersed in this sort of game jam community for the past 4 or 5 years, where there are all these different people within the retro community that have these game jams where people submit their content to a centralized location. That content is judged and shared, and then you can have a winner if you want to. And what makes all this happen is itch.io. Itch.io has a built-in platform that supports what it's supposed to be for video games, but you can submit anything. You set up yourself a jam page, and you share the URL, and anybody can upload files to that page and join the jam. And so it really, the only reason why this happened, if you'd had said that we should do this 5 years ago, I would have just not done it. I wouldn't have started the
You would
process.
have ignored the idiot.
Exactly. But since I could tell there was a way to do it, I set it up, and really, it was the work of an evening. I invoked our AI overlords to create that logo for the jam. I put in the parameters on an itch page to create the page. And I shared the URL in our Discord, and it took a little bit, but people slowly started to submit entries.
First of all, I want to say that I was very flattered that you called this the Amigo Aaron Pod Jam. But really, I mean, at the bare minimum, it should be the Boat and Aaron Pod Jam. But it's pretty much should be the Boat Jam because you did all the everything. I just looked up and you'd posted the link. I was like, what just happened? Because I was just, it's very similar to how we started the show, actually, in a lot of ways. I was just like, boy, someone should do this show. And then later on, we were doing the show because you decided we were going to do it. So once again, Bo, you're the catalyst to my lazy bomb. And speaking of bombs, I thought this was going to bomb because I didn't think we'd get any entries. Let's just say we've had mixed success when we've drawn from the community over the years.
True,
But
true.
I will say sometimes the community makes it look like a jerk, and this is one of those times because we actually got a pretty good amount of support. I mean, I think everyone thought it was a great idea, right? And then some people were motivated or so inclined to shoot up a podcast, and it actually turned out way better than I think either one of us thought it would go.
Well, I figured that we would get some entries for this, and except in as opposed to our other community outreach things, because some of our other community outreach things like create a piece of music with a tracker or something like that, like
Stuff we can't
nobody
do.
yeah, nobody sits in bed at night and is like, man, one of these days I'm going to create this piece of music with a track. I mean, some people probably think that. Weird people think
Bark
that.
bit, for
But
example.
everybody that we know listens to podcasts, and everybody has had a fleeting notion in their life is like, man, I could totally make a single podcast episode. I've got one podcast in me. And it turns
Yeah,
out they were right.
yeah. And one thing that we've preached over the years is that, like, here we are. We did a good chunk of our work from your basement back in the
Hmm.
day, but we're just a couple schlubs. I mean, and Brent's schlub 3. But but we're doing our best, and people are cool about it, and they have a good time. And I think I'd love to see other people jump in. I love when people do that. I love it. When people do their own thing. Because I would like to see other stuff. So this was perfect for me. Just right out of the gate, I want to thank you for putting it together, Boat, and I also want to thank you before we get into the podcast proper for finding us 3 judges of such high caliber with this. We had our good buddy Jack Flack is one of the judges, Rob Flack O'Hara, and of course Ravi Abbott, your partner in crime over across the pond here for the big show coming up in London, and then of
Nottingham.
course I'm sorry, Nottingham, and then lastly we've got Neil from RMC, which we've known Neil for a long time, a great guy, one of your former podcast partners. You really got some winners here, Boat, if I may say.
I tried.
You did a good job. And, of course, Boat also came up with the judging criteria. He came up with pretty much everything. Like I said, so I was just sort of like, I was the doofus. I'm like the George Foreman of this. There's a George Foreman grill. It's got my name on it, but effectively, I would just kind of walk around being fat and dumb. So there
Maybe
you go.
we need to make an infomercial for the next Podjam that can star you.
That's great. Sure. I'm the figurehead for the Podjam. I will say I'm not the worst figurehead for this because I should be the poster boy for the phrase, if this guy can do it, anyone can. That's me. Whoa, here comes Dummy. And so Dummy now is going to lead us as we're going to have a look through the entries this year into the Podjam, Boat. Just a little quick snippet of each one because I want to put them all over, Boat, for doing a good job. And we're going to start we're just going to start at the top in no particular order. And I'm going to start with the original podcast. So I thought to myself, well, listen, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and just make another show because Lord knows another Aaron show needs to be made immediately. But I thought to myself, if I put one up here, maybe that other people will be like, oh, this guy did it. Then we'll get in there. So I did a show. I've threatened to do a show for years, Boat, on a show I like called Conversations, or excuse me, called heck me
Tales
out
of the
here.
Unexpected.
Tales of the Unexpected. I was thinking Conversations with the Dark Side, and so I thought, well, I'll do the first episode of that show as my podcast. So here we'll just listen to a quick snippet. This is Podcast of the Unexpected from yours truly, the sample. Welcome back to the sitting room for another edition of Podcast of the Unexpected with me, your host, Amigo Aaron. This week, we'll be examining Episode 1, Season 1, Man from the South. Very interesting episode and a great way to kick off the series. Man from the South was So that was just a little tidbit of what I had cooking to start out. And I thought to myself, because I didn't want to, I'm not entered in this thing. I thought, at least someone will have something on the board here. I was so happy when the next show came around, Boat, which happened to be one you put together, and yours. Just since we've got you here, since me and you were here, what was the reasoning behind this when you put it together?
Well, the way that we normally do podcasts, I would say, is conversational. We don't do a lot of scripted work.
No,
we don't do a lot. We don't do a lot of post production.
No, none.
And I wanted to put something together that was more along the lines of something you might hear on NPR. Something like All Things Considered, or one of those shows that really has a lot of editing and writing and stuff like that, quality. And I accomplished that for about the first minute of the show. And then I backed myself into a corner by making myself a deadline that I couldn't realistically meet and maintain that quality. So the first minute of this is great. And the next, I don't know, the whole thing is only it's less than 10 minutes long. The rest of it is okay. But I'm real happy with the way, if I would have taken my full time and really done a good job. I feel like I could have done better, but I wanted to get another entry up there just to kind of get the ball rolling, just like you. And so this is Roly Roly Sticky Sticky.
Let's have a quick listen, shall we?
And as you roll up these things, the objects that you roll up become part of your sticky ball that's constantly getting larger and larger. But the items aren't absorbed into the ball or anything. They're still what they were. They're just sticky. And you roll up bigger and bigger stuff, food, people, cars, buildings, until your ball is a massive size. And that's how you do it.
That's good stuff, Boat. And by the way, the instrumentation in that's quite nice. I want to commend you on that as well. Very good stuff there, Boat. So that's Roly Roly 60. I will say, in terms of thumbnails, that's grade A. I will say, I love the thumbnail on that for sure. So next one we picked up, again, we're just doing these in the order they were brought in. This is one from our good buddy Graham W. Vebke. And we've known Graham forever. And so I was real happy to see him put something together. And Graham's a real thoughtful guy, too. And so Graham put something together that I think is very thoughtful and intriguing. And we're going to listen to a clip of it now. It's the 7-4 show, episode 4's O's, or 0000, and the episode is called Essentialism, Boat. Essentialism. Hey, when it comes to living life, that's my motto right there, essentialism. Here we go. Let's listen to Graham.
Or at least 4 items that I think are interesting about the subject. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that is something that I've recently embraced. By recent, I mean in the last year or so. And it really has become a fundamental part of my thinking and my way of living. And that is essentialism. Let me first start by explaining essentialism and what it is, and why it's different to a term you may have heard before called minimalism. Minimalism focuses mostly on simplicity and reduction.
So that was Graham with his 7-4 show. The gimmick on this is 7-minute topics, 4 key points, which I thought was pretty clever, Boater, if I may say. Graham's a clever boy. So and by the way, I should mention him, having listened to all these, I've liked every single one of them. And it's quite diverse. And so I enjoy it. Plus, we're getting people from all over the world, which makes it even more interesting, Boat, when you hear these things. And I have to say, I didn't know anything about essentialism until I heard that episode. So very good stuff there. Next on the docket, it's our good buddy, Pajako. Now, here's a funny story. When Pajako first uploaded this, I downloaded it. I don't know if you did, Boat. And it was just the song.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And so I asked Pajaka, I'm like, is this a song you wrote? What's happening? And he'd accidentally uploaded the wrong MP3 or whatever.
Oh.
And so I was totally baffled when I heard that. I was like, what's happening? And so this is an interesting episode, and it's episode 1 of I Should Be Doing Homework, which should be my kid's theme. Yeah, or housework, excuse me. I should be doing homework and be my kid's theme. Here we go. It's a little something here from our good buddy, Pajako.
Branches is a bird's nest. The view's not any better from up here, she calls down to Bivitar, but there's a bird's nest. Who cares? Come back down. Wait, I want to look in the nest. She works her way over to the nest and looks inside. And there, among the sticks and mud, is a shiny bronze key. She takes the key and climbs back down to the ground. Look what I found in the nest. She shows the key to Bivitar. Well, hang on to it. It might turn out to be useful, but we still don't know which path to take. Well, we know it's not the Lethe path, so let's not go to page 29. Let's take the dirt path and go to page 32.
So that was Pajako. I should be doing housework. So the premise of this show is Pajako is literally reading, I believe it was the Zork Choose Your Adventure book issue. I believe it was issue 1. It's the same one I owned. And he adds sound effects and his own whimsical style to the reading. What'd you think of this one, Bo? Had you ever read these Zork Choose Your Path books?
No, but I was a big fan of all of his Foley work. He did the chirping of the birds. the walking down the halls, all of that stuff. I was incredibly entertained by the antics of the two kids that were the stars of this show. And I didn't realize that Zork made their own choose your own adventure books. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Oh yeah, because they had to get money, and I mean,
Money.
Dungeons and Dragons made them. Tons of people made them because Choose Your Adventure was such a huge hit. I mean, I was a big fan. I think I only had only one or two of the Zork books, but they like a lot of companies made them. I had some of the D&D ones, and the D&D ones even had like you had to keep hit points and stuff on a piece of paper. They were real.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they were real wacky. So an interesting premise for a show. And again, you're right. The Foley and stuff, and that was really good stuff. So here's a crazy one. It's our good buddy Packbilly and friends with the yet to be named Eaten by a Dragon podcast. This is the first story in a continuing adventure, and this has a full cast doing it, and it was very professionally done. Let's have a quick snippet of this one. Boat. This is the yet to be named Eaten by a Dragon podcast.
But first, let us concern ourselves with the events that led to the protagonist's mastication. You'll bear with me then, while we pay a call on the bedeviled little sod, if for no other reason than because it's advisable to know where one's food comes from. We find him, Nathaniel Twigley, in a tattered farm boy's tunic, pitchforking lettuces one mid-autumn morning on the radicchio acre of the local lord's domain. Just now, the lad's father emerges from a straw-topped hovel, taking a final bite from a mealy apple.
Son, put down the pitchfork. I must speak to you.
If you're only going to make raspberry noises at me again, I prefer to just carry on.
That was the incredibly wacky, yet to be named Eaten by a Dragon podcast. I listened to this on the way to a prison one day, and it was there were a couple parts that I was laughing uproariously. I found this very amusing comedy entrant here. I mean, this sounds incredible. It's another one that has sound effects and voice acting. It's quite remarkable. I don't know if you've ever met Packbilly. He's quite a wacky character. It's just full stop, and loves to sing too. We both know that Boat from Boat Fest a couple years ago. What did you think of the wacky stylings in the old yet to be named Eaten by Dragon podcast?
Well, Packbilly has a long and illustrious relationship with Jim Plays Games, who is a YouTuber of some repute, and so he joined forces with this guy, and it is a hilarious Monty Python-esque medieval romp. I listened to this while I was weed eating the backyard.
Yeah, you've been hitting the yard hard this year with the working full time. How's the yard looking so far, Bode?
It looks
Not to change the
impeccable.
subject.
It looks
It's very
impeccable.
good.
You're gonna love it next time you come over.
You need to come over to my yard. What are your rates? We'll talk about it after the show. So here's an interesting one. Here, Bode. I'm not even sure what's the name of the fellow that did this particular one, Boat. I'm not sure. It's the You're the Poet.
Oh, so this is my buddy. This is from outside the Amigos community. This is my buddy Matt Bergio and his dad Phil Bergio. Matt and I go way back. He was also a trombone major at Ohio University, and we graduated at the same time. And he went on to pursue his band directing career as a blackjack dealer at a casino. Because guess what? Band directors don't make no money, yo. And so he has always had a passion for poetry. He writes really good poetry. His dad writes really good poetry. And they decided to make a podcast called You're the Poet, where each episode they invite a different guest on to share both a poem that inspired them and a poem of their own writing. And so this is their pilot episode where it's just the two of them. They both share poems that they've written and poems that have inspired them. I really enjoyed this one. This was a great change of pace, and well done to Matt and his dad for putting this out.
Absolutely. Let's have a snippet of You're the Poet.
Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your voices, words, and thought. From here we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet. Welcome to You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Bergio, and I'm here with my co-host and dad, Phil Bergio, as we start this podcasting adventure. The idea behind You're the Poet is to create a community of people that love poetry and want to share their poetry with others. To find out more about how to join us, send us an email to host@you'rethepoet.com or visit our website at you'rethepoet.com. So again, welcome and thank you for joining us on our pilot.
There you go, Boat. You're the Poet. Starts out with a nice poem there. Listen, I think this is a great idea. I like the idea of, I've never been any good at poetry, Boat,
I don't believe
because
that.
I'm a
I think
doofus,
you
big
could crank 'em
doofusy
out.
type. Are you kidding me? Unless the chick from Nantucket's involved, I'm screwed.
What
That's
if
the
you and
extent
your
of-
dad sat down and started a poetry
That would be I will say no one would see that coming. I can tell you that right now, because that would be totally stunning. Because I don't think Dad's much of a poet either. But I think it's a great idea. I think it's great that your buddy came on and got his dad, and I hope we get to hear more from them. Another great entry there. You're the Poet. Here's an entry here that is from our good buddy. And this one's called Children of the Sun, a Mysterious Cities of Gold podcast. And this is from Pixels at Dawn, Boat. What you think of this?
So this was a show that I watched a lot when I was little on Nickelodeon. It came on at odd times. I think it came on like early Sunday morning at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So I watched it irregularly, but I was always baffled by what was going on because it is a serialized show, which was rare for children's programming. It still is rare for children's programming. You don't normally get a continuous 36 episode arc for a series because if you're drop in on one, you don't necessarily know what's going on. But I was intrigued by it. I thought it had a real neat look to it, and I'd totally forgotten about it until Pix recorded this episode. And so, as somebody who has contemplated going back to it, this was kind of a neat refresher of the first episode and what to expect for the series.
Very good. So let's have a quick snippet from Children of the Sun podcast episode 1.
And the conquest of South America and the search for gold. So the main characters are 3 children who get mixed up in all this history that's happening around them while they set off to find the cities of gold for themselves and also to answer some questions about their past, which all gets very mysterious. I think the opening monologue for every episode tells it the best. It is the 16th century. From all over Europe, great ships sail west to conquer the New World, the Americas.
There you go. That was Children of the Sun podcast, episode 1. One thing I like is that Pix has a great voice, doesn't he, Bud? He's got a very luxurious, with the accent and everything. It's quite a comforting speaking voice that he's got. And he even looks comforting. If you just look at Pix,
does. You look at his face and you feel at ease in your soul.
Yeah, I would like to have that ability, but people look at me and they grab their wallets. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but that's excellent work from our good buddy Pixels with the Children of the Sun podcast. So next on the docket here, and this one, I have to say this one sort of surprised me because I didn't know what he was going to do. This is from the Brent, kicked one in. And this is the I'm Going to Lie to You conspiracy theory podcast. Now, I will say, if I had to pick what Brent was going to do as a podcast, I didn't know he was into this stuff, if I'm honest. Did you?
I'd heard him talk about the subject of his podcast before, but I didn't know that he was just exactly what you said. I didn't know that he was an auteur of the conspiracy theory.
Oh, very fancy, Boat. And listen, Brent was like me and you. We were going to try to put something in there just to say we did. And I'm glad he did. This was an interesting listen. Let's have a quick snippet from the I'm Going to Lie to You show from the Brent.
I'm going to lie to you. Let me take you back to the 1990s when GPSs were just getting to be popular on the commercial market. And you could have your GPS somewhere in the car and some were handheld devices. And you could take those and get to about 60 feet of your intended destination. That's about 20 meters. And we used to do this thing called geocaching. And in geocaching, you would get a GPS coordinate, go to it using your GPS, and that would get you in the area.
And that was the Brent's I'm Going to Lie to You, a conspiracy theory podcast. He gets into some interesting stuff about GPSs and the government's ability to track things to a much tighter area than one would normally find. It's very interesting stuff. There was a time I was a big conspiracy buff boat back in the day, but man, it got beat to death in the age of the internet, and it's a lot like my interest in like ghosts and Bigfoot. Like they've pretty much been squelched by the avalanche of baloney that over the last couple of years. But this is the sort of thing, the technical sort of conspiracies I do think are quite interesting. Good on the Brent. I enjoyed that one, and I like a little bit of conspiracy theory once in a blue moon. Next out of now here's another one. I didn't see this one coming either. This is our good buddy Petzel, and Petzel came up with something here called the Sono the Times podcast. Bo, this one really, maybe you saw this coming. This came out of left field to me. What'd you think of the Sono the Times podcast?
Well, I think it's a great idea for a show. Essentially, Petzel's got a buddy who's from China. He spent his first 12 years in China, and then he moved to New York City for a short time, and then he moved to Alabama. So he had culture shock out the wazoo, being whiplashed from China to New York to Alabama. And, of course, these fish out of water stories are always fun to listen to. I myself have been a fish out of water many a time in my international living experiences, so I could identify with that. I thought this one was really good.
Yeah, let's catch a snippet of this. This is Petzel and his buddy talking about what it's like to be a Chinese American. And I will say, you get a lot of insight, not just in his experiences in America, but what life is like for a family in a village in China, which I had not much of an idea. Let's have a listen.
Cool.
Yuli. We called it, it's kind of like Yuli that we always joke about and say that's, like redneck town in Florida.
Okay. There are rednecks in Florida?
Apparently.
Are there rednecks in China?
Not that I know of.
Do they have an equivalent of that?
There's different cultures.
Okay.
I wouldn't say redneck, but, like I only speak 3 different dialects in China. And different region, they have different dialects. Sometimes totally different language.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then different province, they could have a different slangs. Or even like say dialects. When there's a dialect,
that's a little snippet of the Sign of the Times podcast. I like in that particular clip they were talking about if there were rednecks in Florida and if there were rednecks in China, and so I found that particularly amusing because I would assume there are rednecks all over. So, but maybe not. Rednecks here.
Yeah.
What's that?
Rednecks know no boundaries.
That's right, Bode. Exactly. That's the way we like it. Sun's the soil. That's the way we like to handle it. So that's the Sign of the Times podcast. And it ends on sort of they're talking about a part 2. So hopefully, regardless, this is another one that we'll get to see continue in the future. Next on the docket here is our good buddy Hitch. This is another one I didn't see coming, Boat. And this is the Hitching Post. Now, this is one that actually solved a puzzle for me because Hitch talks about, and by the way, Richard Hitch, a very well-known, well-respected streamer. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's an all-around good egg and a big-time, he's a good player and well-respected amongst our circle. And so it was nice to see him put one out. But this is about a show that I'd seen clips of, that I'd heard the noises from, but I never knew what it was. And it's a show called The Clangers. Are you familiar with this one, Boat?
No.
This was what a wacky show. This is one for you to YouTube. Here's a little clip of Hitch talking about The Clangers.
Of the Hitching Post podcast, where today we delve into the magical and mysterious world of classic television. I'm your host, as usual, Hitch, and this time we are setting our sights on a show that has captivated audiences for generations, The Clangers. The Clangers first graced our screens in 1969. It is a British stop-motion animated series.
So I found that quite interesting. That was Hitch with the Clangers. It's for those that don't know, it's a stop-motion animation that was pretty much didn't use anything but like noises to communicate. A very unusual. Again, this is one of those things you see pop up in like a TV montage, and you're like, "What in God's name is that?" It's an artsy children's show from the '60s, is what it is, brother. And Hitch gets into it quite nicely. We had a couple of these shows that were podcasts, including my own, that were talking about, TV. I think that's an area ripe for a good podcast, Bode, because because if you dig into them, you could really dig up some interesting, material on these forgotten shows, or maybe even some shows that weren't forgotten. Some of my favorite podcasts are about like the Twilight Zone, for example, or I listened to one that's about Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes. So I'm a big fan of these, and I think this is an area that is always fruitful when it comes to exploration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. So that is the bunch of it there. We had 7 entries, plus we had mine, Boats, and Brent's. I do want to, before we get to the actual winners here, we had one unfortunate bit here. It's our friend Sheila Dixon had something ready to go, but we had got the date wrong. And so she had mixed it up. And so I told her, I was like, the Podjam's over, but I'm still going to make a mention of what you did because I really enjoyed it. Sheila has a channel on YouTube, and it's a great channel where she does all sorts of incredible music. She's really talented. She's all like you, Bode. She plays multiple instruments and keyboards and does sound effects, everything. And her channel's called MIDI In, MIDI space IN, if you want to check her out on YouTube. And she did a little number here, Bo, where she did she took a snippet of Dracula and dramatized it. I'm going to play a little snippet now, if you'll indulge me. This right here is a little snippet of her Van Helsing spoken word. Here it is.
She caught me and held me back and whispered like a voice that one hears in a dream. So low it was. No, don't go without. Here you are safe. I turned to her and, looking in her eyes, said, "But you? It's for you that I fear." Whereat she laughed, a laugh low and unreal, and said, "Fear for me? Why fear for me? None safer in all the world from them than I am."
I really enjoyed that. I love the old radio shows, Bode. And so I like the idea of, in some ways, just sort of in the same ballpark with what Bajaka did, which is like doing the Foley work and some of the voices. I love that stuff. And if we ever do another one of these Podjams, I've told Sheila to make sure she gets her dates right, get something in, because I think she would be a great entry into this. And again, check out her YouTube channel. It's really quite interesting. She's an incredibly talented lady. So, without further ado, Boat, you've got in your hot little hands the results of the judging. Do you want to go over real quick before we get into it the criteria the judges used to pick these winners?
So what I did was I had all of the judges rank their top 4 podcasts. And then I took all of the entries that received the most votes from the top 4 and compiled those, or ordered those, the podcast that got the most appearances, then the second most, then the third most.
Very good. And Bo, you're an old hand. I mean, I don't know how you come up with the idea, but I mean, every part of that sounds like the way to go. I'm glad that I wasn't a judge in this, because it would have been incredibly difficult to judge this stuff. And I will say, I want to put over one of our good buddies who's sponsoring this event and giving away the prizes for this, and that's our good buddy Frank at RetroRewind.ca. Me and you, Bo, we haven't done a live Frank promo for a while. I'm going to put Frank over for a bunch of reasons. you can go to retrorewind.ca because they've got great service and they've got great selection. All right, and they do, and good shipping, and you know your stuff's gonna be worked on by people that are quality, top shelf technicians. That's a fact. We've seen that in action at Boat Fest a couple years and other places. But something else that people may not know is that Frank at Retro Rewind is he puts his money where his mouth is, including sponsoring events like Cocoa Fest for the last couple years. He's always been a big contributor at Boat Fest. Anytime we do a charity event, Frank's always there to kick in. He's just a very generous person. He's a quality person, isn't he, Boat?
He is. He's the best. They don't come any better than Franklin Harris. He is the man.
Very good, Boat.
Not only does he have the chops to work on and fix any sort of problem that your machine has, he's one of the kindest people that we've had the pleasure of getting to know through the show. And you see there the transit card, the C64 transit card, that's available for only $1. Dollar
bill. If he just sold these, he'd be a trillionaire. But he does other stuff as well. These right here are worth the price alone. So we want to thank Frank for shelling out the prize money for this event, Boat. Because, this is a prized event, Boat. And so, Boat, you've got the results there in your hot little hands. So I'm going to let you. We're going to. This is a third, second, and first place deal here. So, Boat, who was the third place recipient, my friend?
In third place, 2024 Amigo Aaron's Podjam, the 7-4 show.
There it is. It's Graham W. Vebke with the 7-4 show. Congratulations, Graham. You have just won a $25 gift card from retrorewind.ca. That's a good deal right there, Boat, in my opinion, and well-deserved. So that's the 7-4 show. That is the third place winner. All right, yes. Boat, what do you got for the second place winner here of the Podjam 2024?
In second place, we have Sign of the Times.
Sign of the Times, our good buddy Petzel. And his interviewing his friend and learning all about China and what it's like for someone to just come to America straight and just try to meld in. Interesting show. I really enjoyed this one. Petzel, you have just won yourself a $25 gift card from retrorewind.ca. Again, a good deal right there for our buddy Petzel. Now, before you read the final result, I do want to say this. Yes, this was a judged event. We brought in judges, but really, and I mean this sincerely, this isn't some kind of like award show garbage. Every single one of these podcasts were very entertaining and well done. They all deserve a listen, and I'd love to see all of them keep going, frankly. And we would hope that if you are listening to this right now, you will go and check these out. We're going to. If you look on the screen, we've had the Spotify playlist, the Spotify Podjam address up on the screen. You can listen to all these via that address, and we'll also put it in the show notes. Please check these out. Give these guys some support, and hopefully they can be encouraged, Boat, to do more in the future.
Absolutely. And the winner of the inaugural Amigo Aaron Podjam is... Oh, please. Children of the Sun, a Mysterious Cities of Gold podcast.
Children of the Sun, the big winner for Podjam 2024. Pixels at Dawn, you, my friend, put out a fine show, and you're the first place winner, and you will receive a $50 gift card from retrorewind.ca. Our good buddy Frank, thanks again to Retro Rewind for his generosity. Congratulations to Pixels of Dawn. Boat, what do you think about this? The Pixels of Dawn, the big winner.
Well, his podcast had everything. It was excellent quality sound recording. There was no GarageBand micery. You have a great job with a insertion of different, like the theme tune was great. But at the end of the day, for me, the podcast all comes down to the content and the delivery. And with Mysterious Cities of Gold's a well-loved children's series, and of course, who can argue with the smooth, dulcet, velvety tones of Ian Griffiths, aka Pixels at Dawn.
There you go. There you go. You know, as we wrap this up, Bo, it occurred to me just now that if the Amigos podcast episode 1 had entered this contest, I don't think we could have placed 5th in an elementary school podcasting contest back in the day. And I know me and Brent, when we did our original, when me and Brent recorded Classical Gas, the 3 episodes of that we recorded on Rock Band mics. So, and it was just it's the dirt worst. So every one of these people, this isn't one of those things where you're gonna think to yourself, man, what's this guy using a paper cup? No, all these are top quality sound. They did a good job. Just from an engineering standpoint, I thought they were all easy to listen to, and it's nice that Pixels took home the big prize. Congratulations, Pixels and Dawn, for taking home the gold with Amigo Aaron's Podjam 2024. Listen, Boat, before we sign off, I want to thank you, my friend, for towing me along all these years, and once again coming up with another great idea and executing it. I enjoyed the Podjam quite a bit, and I was so happy the way it went off, and
Now, Aaron,
I salute you, my
before we
friend.
go, we would be remiss if we didn't share our personal favorites from the Podjam. What was your favorite podcast?
Wow, I didn't know you were going to ask me that. To be honest with you, God, I don't know if I can pick one because I liked several of these actually. I will say I enjoyed Sign of the Times quite a bit just because it was so different. You know, I learned a lot about China that I didn't know. But I mean, really, I learned a little something. I don't know anything about the Cities of Gold. I mean, zero. You know, so, and I will say it's got a catchy tune in there. But I enjoyed everything. I liked the concept of You're the Poet. You know, I like the conspiracy things. I will say the Packbillies made me laugh. Hitches informed me. I mean, everyone scored points of me. There was nothing where I was just like, man, this is a labor. When's this sucker going to end? I liked them all. So I guess my answer is the cop out. I don't really have a favorite. I enjoyed pretty much every single show. What about you?
I definitely enjoyed more than others, but it comes down to my personal preference.
Yeah.
I tend to in contrast to our show, I tend to enjoy the briefer podcasts, and my favorites were the Graham's show. Nice, short, sweet, informative. I like the concept of You're the Poet, but my favorite, and I know it will pain you to hear me say this, I thought the Brent was the best overall with his Conspiracy Theory podcast. The reason why was because he tied his own personal experience in with a broader topic in such a way that I found to be particularly entertaining.
Well, thanks to you, he won't be able to fit his head through the door in the arcade. You know, I sent Graham a note after I listened to his, because one thing Graham said, it made me think. I mean, and it was like, man, what am I doing with my life? And so anytime you could pull that trick, I think you've done something. You know, just in closing, I listen to a zillion podcasts, as you know. A lot of them are about gaming, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're about, like, you know, you don't know Flack or something like that. And none of these were, with the exception of your roly-poly, and really, yes, it was about a game, but it was so artistically perpetrated that it didn't feel like, it's not like I'm listening like another edition of the Amigos, I guess what I'm saying. And it was nice. It was really enjoyable for me just to hear different types of content. I've pigeonholed myself over the years, Boat. And I really do need to step out and try to listen to different things. And if you would say, hey, here's a show about self-improvement, or here's a show about poetry, or here's a show about an immigrant, or, you know, I would be like, I'm trying that. Or, you know, or TV shows I've never heard of, I'd be like, But I enjoyed stepping outside my comfort zone. And I think other listeners will enjoy the same. So I do beseech you, if you get a chance, head over and check out these podcasts. I think you'll be in for a very pleasant surprise. So I think we'll take the houseboat and pull the sheet down over Podjam 2024. This may be the only one of these we ever do, but I enjoyed it. Thanks again, Boat, for making it happen. And we will catch you guys again on the next episode of Amigos. Until then, everybody have a pleasant day, and thanks so much for participating. We love you guys, and we hope you enjoyed the jam. Until next time, Boat. Adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/AmigosPodcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.